Jordan Peterson doesn't ever talk about trans people. He kind of does, but what he's really talking about is like the destruction. I believe, by the way, 1,000,000% in social contagion, okay? I think like 80% of people that are non-binary are faking it. If I tell you, for instance, that I think that Jazz Jennings should be a role model for trans people, I imagine you probably wouldn't be okay with that?
I mean,
You think I'm trapping you? I am, but not in the way you know. Don't worry. You're walking into a huge trap right now, so get ready. If Andrew Tate had the exact same background as Hunter Biden, people would say that he was awesome. And then if Andrew Tate, if his name was like Andrew Clinton, so like for instance, I watched Tim Pool and The Surfs TV, Very Far Left versus Tim Pool for whatever he's on the spectrum, where they're arguing about like stuff related to trans healthcare, I think. Mm-hmm. And as I was listening to both of these people speak, I realized that that's like the current conspiracy theory, that if I were to believe in one, I would believe in that one more than anything, I think.
You think everyone should agree with everything you say all the time?
I mean, I'm right all the time, so I think so.
Yeah? Well, I mean, it looks like Blair won that debate a little bit.
First of all, it wasn't even a debate.
Yeah, no, you guys were agreeing on
Number
these
one.
things,
Secondly,
sure.
what do you think she won? What part do you think she won?
When you guys were talking about the medicalization of children, and she was saying that aesthetics should not take precedence over like health, like and long term. Like,
and you think I would argue the opposite, that aesthetics should take priority over health?
Well, I mean, but they are. The idea of continuing to issue these puberty blockers to children is going to ensure that, because again, it's not going to allow them to fully develop in those areas where they need to create the
sure,
peace.
but first of all, we disagreed on the puberty blockers part. But the idea behind puberty blockers is supposed to be to block puberty if you are actually trans, right?
Correct, but the idea is to block puberty, so you don't need to go through that puberty, so then you can transition into the opposite sex.
Yeah.
But the problem is for people who want to get the gender reassignment surgery is that if they've been on puberty blockers, their penis does not grow large enough to make it into a vagina.
I don't know if that's for people that are on...
It is for people who are on puberty blockers.
Chill. I don't know if that's for people that are on puberty blockers or people that haven't gone through any puberty yet at all. So for instance, you probably shouldn't be getting sex reassignment surgery if you haven't gone through any puberty at all. I don't know if you can induce an opposite puberty by giving HRT to like a trans woman. I don't know how that works.
Right.
But also, sex reassignment surgery is a really niche topic. Like even most of the trans people I know don't want sex reassignment surgery.
Right.
I think Blair even said...
She doesn't have it, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't think that's a very relevant, like the hormone blockers and everything I think are more relevant conversation for children rather than SRS, sex reassignment surgery, I think.
Yeah. But for a lot of people, to her point, that's kind of like the next logical step for a lot of people. And especially when they get like put into this system so young, it's like that's always going to like the next logical step, like get on the puberty blockers, get on the hormone replacement therapy, and then, as you get a little bit older, start the surgeries from there.
Well, again, there's a lot of like fully transitioned trans people that just don't get SRS.
Yeah.
Like SRS, I think kind of sucks, and a lot of the things afterwards kind of suck. Like I think there's plenty of people that pass happily and they're fine and they don't like need. Right.
And there's
SRS.
Complications. I believe there's like intense complications for that, even if you don't. Even if you never went on puberty blockers as well, like there's a chance you're going to have complications for that regardless.
Probably, yeah.
So, yeah, but I think just generally, I think that the idea of like blocking puberty, number one, for the reason that we just discussed, but like number two, like that's just kind of wild. The idea of just completely...
Well, I mean, if you're trans, I mean, that being trans is kind of wild, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. But it's just...
So wouldn't you want to...
But there's been plenty of trans people who have then gone into, adulthood and they've been able to transition, but we don't have any type of research that really shows what's going to happen to actually, like, pausing.
Well, sure, but I think that's the point of, like, putting it in a research environment to see what happens, right?
Yeah, but I think that's the point of the arguments that you guys... and I think that's the point that you were making as well, right? That you were saying that you would be supportive of that in an environment where it is more so controlled. A lot more controlled, and not this mass distribution and just pushing through the pipeline type thing that we're kind of seeing right now.
Sure, that's what I'm for, but I think a lot of the people that are saying what you're saying, and maybe even you, I don't know if with more research if you would change your mind. Like if you could identify with 100% accuracy children that were trans children, would you be okay with giving them puberty blockers?
No.
So then there's like a red herring argument. You don't even care about the research, right?
No, that's not true, because the research, what do you mean when you say helps trans children?
What I'm saying is, let's say that you could 100% identify this person is trans and they're going to feel trans for their entire life.
Yeah. No, because I think that, again, what Blair said is true. I believe that aesthetics should not be prioritized over other stuff, and we have not been able to see enough evidence and research to determine what are the effects, number one,
that's
of
why I'm
pausing
asking.
puberty
That's
on
why
people.
I'm saying, hypothetically, if we've done the research and you can identify 100% this person's going to be trans, if giving them drugs helps them do whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's better.
It helps them.
Well, they don't have to go through the puberty they don't want to. They can get on drug therapies for their trans, whatever they identify with.
And then there aren't any like long-term like health implications or anything like that.
Yeah, that's what research means.
Right,
yeah, obviously for that stuff.
Yeah, sure. But then the only other issue that you would have with that, which Blair also indicated, is that like a large majority of people, I believe like up to 90% of people actually grow out of the gender dysphoria that they go through.
Kind of, but that's a lot of that has to do with like desisting of like of dysphoric feelings. That's not necessarily people that have started medication, and those numbers are all over the place depending on what you provide. Like, I think the desistance for people on HRT on the last there was like a military study that somebody sent me. I think it was pretty high. I think it was like 5 or 6%, but it's not like 80-90%.
Yeah.
Most of the times when people are talking about like 90% desistance, what they're really talking about is a kid that felt dysphoric at some point who changed their mind after going through puberty, but it's not people that have already been prescribed drugs.
So let me go back and restate my point. So if we were able to prove definitively and we could identify that someone is trans and they were not going to grow out of it, as in this is not something that they could potentially, after going through these surgeries, life-changing surgeries, both internally and externally, that are going to affect them, then there weren't going to be any long-term health repercussions, then yeah, sure, of course. Why would you want somebody to have to go through that type of suffering? The problem is it's very difficult to actually say that with any type of absolute certainty.
Well, hold on, we don't do anything in the world with absolute certainty, right?
I know, but...
And no drugs, no vaccines, things for children, like nothing is...
But a certain amount of gatekeeping should also exist to the point where we're not having the large amount of, like, number one, detransitioners, but then...
I don't think there are that many detransitioners.
There's a lot more than have ever previously been, and also granted because there's a lot more trans people who are allowed to be like out right now, so of course
sure, but I think we always have to look at it we always have to look at it as like a percentage, right? There's probably going to be more now than before because there's more people that are trans than before, but I mean there's going to be like an overall greater percentage of people that are trans, so we should look at like what is the percentage of detransitioning, right?
I just think that the biggest issue that I have and I can't speak for Blair, but maybe a lot of other people in a similar position, is it's not like the actual thing of like people being trans and giving them the care that they need. It's the fact that it's become so politicized, and the fact that now it's become such an issue and it's become such a sensitive topic that people, number one, they can't have any type of contrary opinions without being called bigoted, without being called, XYZ. But also the fact that now we've seen in many instances that people are just being blindly pushed through, and oftentimes kids being blindly pushed through this medical system without any type of, gatekeeping involved, sometimes without the parents' consent even. Like, you hear about kids being, like, socially transitioned and stuff like this at schools without the, like, things like this. It's more so how it's become so politicized and the way that it's really starting to affect, like, culture more so than actually, like, getting trans kids the care that they need. Like, I'm sure nobody would actually have an issue with that if it wasn't such a political thing. And if all of these kids that certainly aren't trans are now falling victim to a ideology that may have otherwise never even affected them. They could have gone on living a totally normal life, maybe being a little bit, gender non-conforming, maybe being a little bit weird, maybe something else. But because of the political state and how prevalent this discourse has become and the way it's permeating into every single aspect of culture, I believe that there could be maybe not a huge aspect, but a small aspect of social contagion that we're seeing as well, which also plays into it. And again, the gatekeeping isn't there to actually say, like, is this social contagion right now? Is this maybe some other mental health things? Is there some other things playing into this? Or is this a trans person and do I just blindly affirm? And I think that most of the time it's leaning towards the side of the blind affirmation.
Sure. So here's how I view this whole conversation. Okay. So here we will we'll call this CP for crazy progressive. Okay.
CP? Great.
Yeah, you know what? We will call this CP.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I will have this.
Please.
I will have this up here, okay?
Jesus.
Okay, we'll call this RP for reasonable position. And we'll call this RP for reactionary position. Hold on, I need new things for all of this, okay? Let me rethink this.
Child, red pill. What? Those are the acronyms that
Okay,
we're
give me
by.
a second, okay? My mouse.
Do you need a pad?
No, I just need to see where my mouse is. Where is it? Do you see it? Oh, wait. Oh, there it is. Oh my god. Okay.
Going to red.
Okay.
Stop. Oh my god.
I don't even like calling the left one progressive, but I'll do it just to satisfy you, okay? So here's my issue, okay? You have two different positions. These are what I observe, okay?
Okay.
You've got a progressive position, a super progressive position, okay? And I'm gonna say that the problem with this is we've got something that's called, I'll call it relentless affirmation, okay? So affirm all children, self-ID. If you're trans, it's because you say you are, and we're just gonna give you whatever drugs you need, okay?
Okay.
This would be like the crazy progressive side. And then here, you've got what I would call the reactionary side, which I would call relentless roadblocks.
So the people who are like trying to make it illegal for like trans adults even, and the people who are just like, just totally saying we need to exterminate transness from society. Like the Daily Wire people, basically.
I feel like, well, or a lot of the arguments you just gave. So I feel like what happens is people...
The arguments I gave? You think that
Yes.
I'm relentless?
Oh, yes, we'll get there, okay? The issue that I run into is I feel like here is a reasonable middle ground, okay? Here's what I consider a reasonable middle ground, okay? You have things like critical therapy for children, okay? You've got research-based medicine, we'll say RBM, okay? Research-based medicine, okay? And you've got, we'll say parents plus doctors involved, okay? I think if you truly believe that trans people are real, now if you don't, there's a whole different argument, but if you truly believe that trans people are real, I think this is like the very, 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 very obvious middle ground. Because if you do believe trans people are real, you want to find a way to accurately identify them, and you want to be able to focus medical care on them in the way that improves their outcomes the most, essentially, right? But the problem I run into is, based on which side you're arguing with, if a super progressive runs into a reactionary person, what they go is, oh, well, hold on. If there's critical care, you're never going to be able to get hormones. Or hold on, if you've got to go through all these parental processes, parents might block their kids from doing it. Hold on, if we wait for the research, there might never be research that shows that this particular drug is good because of, transphobic institutions and researchers. So we need to just have relentless affirmation. We need to go by self-ID, blah, 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 blah. I think that position is insane. As a parent and as a reasonable person, I think that it's an untenable position. But then you come over here. Now there are two different ways to do this reactionary argument, but I'll do the more reasonable reactionary argument. Is people start saying things like, not a single child can detransition. Any harm is too much harm. There can never be a mistake in any of this care. Sometimes it might go wrong. Basically what they end up wheeling out are a whole bunch of arguments that you would never apply or never use as a standard for any other type of care in the world, but because it's related to trans people, and because I think there's like a secret tumor here, which is like, there's like a whole like matrix gender ideology baggage, like there's all this other shit here that they're kind of like using to fight over on this trans thing.
Wait, what do you mean?
Like when somebody says that like if I make an argument that like, hey, I think maybe there should be trans healthcare available for minors, the other person here is like, oh, this guy thinks that there should be mask mandates and mandatory vaccines, and he probably doesn't like Andrew Tate, and he probably doesn't like men that work out.
Yeah,
like all of these things. What?
Same with that guy.
Sure,
too.
it can be on the left thing here. There can also be a bunch of baggage as well, right? But it's frustrating because sometimes when I'm arguing with people, I don't even know if I'm talking about trans stuff or if I'm getting roped into like all of these other like Jordan Peterson doesn't ever talk about trans people. He kind of does, but what he's really talking about is like the destruction of society. Like that's what all of his trans arguments essentially boil down into.
I mean, the thing about free speech and compelled speech and not having to technically.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's a pretty fair argument.
No.
You don't think that that's fair?
I think there are arguments
you
that
think that if somebody wants to be referred to as like fae self or like
literally
demon
nobody.
self,
Hold on. Firstly, nobody uses
Is this just some
Neopronouns, that's a wild position that nobody defends except for crazy kids in school. Okay, number one. And number two, you can be against those positions. I'm against those positions. Okay, I think neopronouns are fucking wacky, goofy, and stupid. But that doesn't inform my position at all on how I feel about like trans children or trans healthcare. And if it does, that means that you've like you're roping all these things together and you're like fighting against a boogeyman every time these things come out.
I get what you're saying, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I can agree partially with what Jordan Peterson is saying so far as like I feel like it's your prerogative to want to be referred to in a certain way, and it's my prerogative to be able to say yes or no to that. I mean, I'm a nice person, so most of the time I'm not going to make it weird or uncomfortable for somebody, but I think compelling that by law is weird, and I think that it's great that he was able to speak out about that. Now, does that necessarily mean that I completely disagree with some of the points that you're making here? Like, no. So I don't agree that believing one necessarily ropes you into all of the others. I think it can be a little bit more nuanced than that, because I think they're different topics, like because it's more about the free speech than the actual trans stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I'm just saying that like when healthcare for trans kids comes out, these are all the other arguments that I feel like are being made at the same time.
Right.
You know, like I feel like you ever talk to somebody and they obviously have like a lot of trauma? And you're like, you can tell that as you're talking to them that they've got like demons that they're fighting. That's what I feel sometimes when I talk to conservatives. I feel like they got a lot of demons that are coming out that they see behind me. And it's like, well, let's just talk about trans healthcare. And they're like, okay, well, we're literally going to lose to Russia because of the destruction of Western society. And this is why Islam is better than Christianity, because they don't do this shit. And it's like, okay, like, I don't know what we're talking about at this point.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I feel like that's not the main argument. That's just some outlandish people.
Well, sure, but then why it should be...
Let's leave the diagram up. I like the diagram.
Sure, it should be relatively easy, I think, to get people to agree on this, as long as there's critical therapy, as long as we use research-based medicine, and as long as like there's parental consent. I don't see how you could ever be opposed to, assuming all three of these criteria are met, like why would we ever be opposed to like healthcare available for trans kids in the form of like puberty blockers? Yeah,
sure, so why do you think I'm this guy?
Well, because you bring up like so for instance, you bring up like social contagion.
Okay.
What does that have to do with it? Like, people could be social contagious to feel like depressed or ADHD. Do we not give those medications to children?
Yeah, but I'm saying that again, the depression and some of these other disorders are not as politicized, and so they're not being as blindly affirmed. Usually, there's a little bit more therapy and more things that need to go into it versus the trans issue right now. And I'm not saying that the social contagion makes up even the majority or a large portion of it, but your argument is you're saying if you think that trans people are real, then you are like you must hate them if you're anything other than this position. And I think that that's not true, because anything other than
this middle position? Yeah. Yes, I would agree with that. What you just said, yes, true.
Yeah, or even this one. Some people would probably say that.
Yeah, the one on the left is crazy. Yeah, they would say the same thing, but those guys are losers, so. But I'm saying that like there is a lot of, maybe not as much politicization around like ADHD and depression, but there are a lot of people that fake that shit on fucking Twitter. It's very easy today to get like amphetamines prescribed to you.
Yeah, sure. But again, it's not as, maybe we hear more about it because of how politicized the trans issue is, for sure. Mm-hmm. But it seems to be making up a much larger community, and it seems to be disproportionately affecting young people in a lot of ways. Yeah, I
don't disagree, but the problem is people never seem to want to fight against that by in having this middle position. No, they always go to this, because like I agree. I believe, by the way, 1,000,000% in social contagion. Okay, I think like 80% of people that are non-binary are faking it. Okay.
Did you hear about the dissociative identity disorder? And,
yeah, but I followed all that shit too. I had a DID person in my community.
But you want to know what's crazy is like to actually get them out of it, they actually need to go through real therapy to get out of it. Not like DID medication and therapy, but they've actually so much built up something. It's like so psychosomatic in their brain that they literally believe that they have it. Mm-hmm. And if that's possible for people on that type of a level, of course it could be possible for other mental illnesses or for trans people and this and that. So I'm not saying that to invalidate the fact that we need to use this, because there are trans people who do suffer from gender dysphoria, but I'm saying that we can't just say that if we're not blindly affirming, or if we aren't being, maybe putting in some gatekeeping, or maybe just second guessing things every now and again, or putting a little bit of critical pushback.
And I don't necessarily disagree.
So why do you think I'm this guy, not that guy?
Because I noticed that for a lot of people, there's very selective skepticism or selective putting the brakes on anything. If I tell you, for instance, that I think that Jazz Jennings should be a role model for trans people, I imagine you probably wouldn't be okay with that.
I mean,
you think I'm trapping you? I am, but not in the way you know. Don't worry. You're walking into a huge trap right now, so get ready.
I I mean, I don't think that that's the ideal outcome of a trans person, right? Like, Jazz has never had like an orgasm or something. Like, they've had a bunch of botched surgeries. They're never going to enjoy a very crucial part of their life.
True. You're being very skeptical and very critical. Okay. Which is fine. That's okay. I'm glad. I don't think Jazz is, I think that person's life is and that's a horrible representative.
Yeah.
However, I think it was just as obvious that Andrew Tate is a dog shit representative and role model for men, like in a million different ways. And we can go down the list. But you're very keen to make a whole bunch of excuses and exceptions for Andrew Tate, even though he admitted that every way that he's made money, except for, I guess, a little bit of kickboxing, has been scummy. He is in bed with the mafia for running his casinos in poor parts of Romania. He literally, even if he didn't traffic women, he got women that are never before involved in camming to do his cam business. He's on record lying about stealing their taxes because he thinks they're stupid. He's on record, Tristan Tate was making fun of all the poor men that they rope into their OnlyFans embassy schemes on these talk shows and shit. Like, they're in every way they're Right. I feel like if I were to ask you, if it were to come out that Andrew Tate was trans, and then I ask you, do you think Andrew Tate is a good trans role model? You would say no for all the reasons I just listed. But because he's more ideologically aligned with you, you're willing to be less skeptical of all of his problems. That's the issue that I run into, I think.
Well, I think it's because it's a lack of awareness. I'm not as aware of these problems. Like, even the legal stuff that you brought up earlier, like, I wasn't aware of all of that, so I can't necessarily speak on it. I think what it comes back to is sometimes you just need to look at people's results. So that's what I would probably say. When you look at Jazz Jennings' results as a poster child for the trans movement, I don't think that the results is something that a trans person in her position would probably be seeking out for their life. Whereas you look at somebody like Andrew Tate and a lot of these red pill guys, maybe the way in which he got there, but they look at his life, they look at the girls he's with, his lifestyle, his ability to travel, what he's doing, and maybe it's because they are not aware of what goes on behind the scenes to get him there in the first place. And like I said, there's probably a lot of pieces to the puzzle that I'm missing, but I think that's what it comes down to, is people able to look at Andrew Tate and see results. And so that's why that is a good role model for them, versus somebody like Jazz Jennings. They would look at and be like, this is not the result I would want for my own transition. So of course that's not going to be the role model. Yeah,
but you understand that there's a couple things. So one, this lack of awareness, I think, plays into the ideology, because the media bubbles that you inhabit are probably more likely to show you negative things about Jazz Jennings rather than negative things about Andrew Tate, right? Number one. Number two, I don't believe this thing here, the results thing. I will fully make this prediction, and I've been predicting it, and so far it's come true. Every single bad or good thing that happens to like Andrew Tate is always going to be spun to be about the Matrix. So for instance, for 6 months they've been in this kind of like pretrial detention, essentially, waiting for charges to come out. And for the longest time, everybody said there were no charges, it's all bullshit, they're just keeping them there for 6 months because they're doing it to be assholes. But now the narrative is changing, because charges are coming down on the Tates. Now the narrative has changed to, oh, well, charges are coming, but they're bullshit. They're going to be made up charges. So if he ends up going to jail and getting convicted, then people are going to say, oh, well, the trial was bullshit. Literally no matter, or let's say he goes to trial and he beats the trial, they're going to say, oh, well, he won because the charges were bullshit. Literally no matter what the outcome is, there's always going to be like a conspiracy way to explain it. So because for instance, you bring up like, well, look at the results of Andrew Tate, like people want to be like that. Well, yeah, but like, what are the results? Like the guy's is he the one with like 20 children, or is that Tristan? I don't remember. It doesn't seem like he's a happy married man.
I'm just talking, on a superficial level. We're talking about the
money?
red pill stuff. Yeah, the standard red pill stuff.
Yeah, but like money, like how many people have money? Like Epstein had a lot of money, arguably more than anyone else in the world. He could fuck whoever he wanted.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there is some
even
guys,
kids.
I mean, there's some people who, like, in the red pill space who have said that, right? Wasn't it you and, you're not red pill, but like Sneaker, who was saying, like, there are bad people who you would not necessarily, like, you wouldn't call that a high value man because of the bad stuff. Yeah, but people would for Andrew Tate.
They call him a moral man, a high value man. Like, this guy's supposed to be a Muslim now, but he's like committing one of the greatest harams of all time, and that he still takes a lot of money from casinos. He runs casino businesses. It's like one of the worst things you can do as a Muslim.
Is gambling illegal?
It's a super haram.
Super haram?
Yeah.
Oh no. Damn. Well, I don't know. I don't think that it's really comparable to be like Jazz Jennings, the role model for the trans movement, versus Andrew Tate being the role model for the red pill movement? The role model for what? For what?
I'm just saying that like there is a selective skepticism involved that I notice. That like for instance, if Andrew Tate had the exact same background as Hunter Biden, people would say that he was awesome. Travels the world, rich businessman, makes money in all these countries, fucks hookers and prostitutes, smokes crack, doesn't give a tall as fuck, 8-inch dick, people would be like, oh my God, like Hunter Tate is the best guy in the world. But because Hunter Biden is like on the Democrat side, they're hypercritical of all of those things. And then if Andrew Tate, if his name was like Andrew Clinton, it would be like he obviously trafficked all those girls, probably most of them, probably an abusive person. All those tapes that came out, right, with him like smacking girls and them crying. No, those girls were never in on that. Like people would treat him in such a different way.
Okay, that's fine. So whatever, devil's advocate, they're a bad advocate. But what's that got to say about Jazz Jennings? Like that's still.
I agree that Jazz Jennings is bad.
Mm-hmm. And would you agree that probably a lot of the representatives of, like, I feel like the people who should be representing the LGBTQIA plus whatever other letters there are should be representing all people like Blair, and people who are able to think critically about these things. Obviously, people like Blair aren't transphobic. She's trans herself. But people need to be able to think critically, to be able to put these gatekeeping is not a bad thing. I think that's something that should absolutely be more so enforced, especially now more than ever that we're seeing a lot of these other countries retract on what they're saying. And I don't think that it's due to bad press. I think maybe a little bit of it, some of it. I think that some of it's due to the social contagion, some of it isn't, but regardless, it's still enough to justify. It's not one trans life or one life, it justifies it all. No, I think it's a substantial enough number that we can actually talk about it being like an issue. And I think getting to this middle ground is going to be the biggest problem when you have both sides who are so like hell-bent on their way playing out. Like I find it very difficult to imagine like a future where we're actually going to like get to this.
Yeah, but I feel like if I were to go like scrolling through, I don't know if you have like, do you have Twitter?
Yeah, I just got Twitter recently.
Okay, I feel like if I were to scroll through your Twitter, would I find most of the like comments and engagement like in this middle part, or would they like all be over here?
Is there Twitter for this middle part? I didn't even know.
Yeah, there's a guy called the Omni-Liberal on Twitter. He's based in this middle part, okay?
I don't think I follow you on Twitter.
You don't.
I shouldn't. Should we see? Oh yeah, the first thing is Tucker Carlson.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, what pops up?
A lot of flags in there. Oh, wow, look at that. What was that one? Do you believe the rumors that Michelle Obama is transgender? I don't know if it's transphobic or racist. People have been saying Michelle Obama has been trans since Obama entered office.
Really?
Yes.
Damn. Is that based off of what Tucker said on his second episode or whatever? He said something about
No,
Michelle.
this has been a running thing for like 15 years in the United States.
Did he say that Obama was like gay or something? Or was he saying that Michelle was
People
bad?
thought that, so Trump ran, I don't know if Trump started this or someone else did, but I think Trump started the rumor that Barack Obama was born in Kenya. So he lied about where he was born. And then other people carried this torch of Michelle Obama, because she's got broad shoulders, that she's secretly trans.
Okay. Interesting. Oh yeah, there you go. What do you think of Tucker's show being brought to Twitter? Do you feel like Twitter's going to be another, like, kind of like a Rumble, like an uncensored space for people to be able to content?
I don't know what the monetization options look like on Twitter, so we'll see. Yeah.
It seems like a lot of people are getting hit real hard on YouTube lately. Like,
Really? Who?
all the Daily Wire people got like kicked off, right? Basically.
I feel like I would have heard about that. There's no way.
I don't think like permanently, but so Candace Owens is suspended. Matt Walsh got demonetized. Brett Cooper, I believe, got like some strikes. Like pretty much all of them. They've been hit pretty. I was watching a Timcast about it a couple days back.
Oh, Timcast, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you might have. Let's check. I'm not sure. Daily. Wait. Fuck.
He was saying that his theory was that it's about the election. Because they don't want as much like right-leaning free media out on YouTube. Type in Timcast.
Okay, well, listen. I would never trust him as a first-party source on anything.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so here we go. We've got YouTube demonetizes Matt
and then
Walsh.
Candace Owens is actually like.
This is a month ago. Okay. I wonder what he said.
And then I think it was for misgendering.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I mean, that's a policy on YouTube. I mean, you're not supposed to do it, but.
And then there was, and then Candace Owens got suspended.
YouTube account has been suspended and issues cryptic until then message. Oh, also over trans stuff. Man, we're really just, everybody's talking about trans stuff, huh?
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
It seems to be the main thing.
Yeah, pretty important. Do you feel like trans stuff impacts your life on a daily basis? New immigrant to the United States, trying to find an apartment to rent, looking for work, employment, all that. Do you feel like trans stuff is a big part of your daily life?
No, but it's like like how much it's politicized. That's what gets annoying and affects like daily life for people. I feel like, yeah. So it's not even the issue in general, but then the people on these two sides of things that want to be crazy with it. I think that's what actually just affects people's lives, or not even affects their life, but it's just like annoying or inconvenient or just like cringe, like, yeah. But no, I mean, I think that there's a reason why there's so much discourse about it. I think that both sides should be able to agree that, above all, like, children need to be protected. I don't think that should be like a left-leaning or like right-leaning. Yeah,
but that's
stance.
like begging the question, right? Everybody believes children should be protected, but it's over how do we protect them? That's what, right?
Yeah, and then actually being able to critically like look at the research and be like, okay, is this helping or harming? But
sure, but conservatives seem to only like the research when it supports them. To be fair, progressives do the same, but I feel like people don't engage well with any research that's contradictory to their position. For instance, Rollo Tomasi cites a lot of Evo Psych research, but then when I give him updated research that proves he's wrong, he says, oh, well, now I think that the institutions are like liberal bias.
Oh, really?
So now he doesn't believe them, right? Or a lot of conservatives believe that ivermectin was a good alternative to any other type of treatment for SARS-CoV-2, but then as soon as like the big ivermectin studies came out and showed that it was dog shit, then they were like, well, we don't believe that research, we think. So it seems like people are very selective when they pick the research that they want to believe.
Right. What's in your opinion, what's the most trusted form of research? Like,
you can just read the research. I mean, stuff is published. Like,
okay, but like, so what do you think makes people like invalidate a piece of research? Like, what makes something strong versus something like weak?
Problem is, one, the vast majority of people don't even engage with research, including pundits. When most people say that they've seen research or they do research, what they mean is they heard a guy quote maybe an abstract from a study one time on a podcast. That's the big thing. So like, for instance, I watched Tim Pool and there was this guy called The Surfs TV. Do you know? Very far left versus Tim Pool for whatever he's on the spectrum, where they're arguing about like stuff related to trans healthcare, I think. And as I was listening to both of these people speak, I realized that neither of them have any idea how research works or like the basic terminology of what it is. So for instance, the SERPs was there. So there's something called a literature review, right? That's where you basically look at a bunch of studies and you kind of say like, this is what I think, basically where we're at. There was a lit review that was posted on, I think it was a Cambridge website or something. And he was trying to say it was a peer-reviewed meta-analysis. But the problem is, one, it wasn't peer-reviewed. It was just hosted on their school's website. Cornell. Number one, so it wasn't peer-reviewed. Two, it wasn't a meta-analysis. It was a literature review. A meta-analysis is when you take a whole bunch of different studies' data sets and you try to comport. You try to get all the data sets to fit one data set to make a larger sample size, basically.
Gotcha.
Very quickly. Meta-analysis is very difficult to do, very high standard, but like very good research if you can do one well. A lit review is basically just like, oh, this is where we're at. But neither of these guys knew what they didn't really know the difference between any of those things. Now, for a layman, I would say, okay, fine. I'm not going to sit here and like jerk off over how much you know about studies or whatever. But the scary thing is it's possible, it's conceivable, in fact, it's probably already happened, that I've argued with somebody in real life. And when I talk about research, usually I've read at least a bit of a study, published in a journal, and this is where I'm coming from. And somebody else will kind of go like, oh, well, I've seen the research too. But they haven't seen the research. They're quoting Tim Pool, who even he doesn't understand the research, right? Oh. So do you see the issue? So people will say things like, for instance, like here's this thing, people say, you can find a study that supports anything. That's not true. You can find a pundit that will support anything, and you can find a pundit quoting a study that will support anything.
What's pundit mean?
Pundit is like a guy that gives commentary on politics. Oh, okay. So like I'm technically a pundit, I think,
You're
right?
A pundit?
Yeah, people that do like political commentary. Okay. But yeah, that's my issue. So I mean, like you can find research, like if you're looking for, generally for any big topic, there'll be like a few really well-respected studies.
Right.
There's not like a billion studies on everything. Usually like a few big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look at like respected journals, right? Nature, New England Journal of Medicine, National or NEBR for research, Bureau of Research. Is it? I forget the NEBR. But like, yeah, there's big, yeah. You can do research, but most people don't. That's the point of it. Yeah,
so, in the last show that we did where we were talking a little bit about politics, I brought up the point, and you kind of agreed that the education system and a lot of media and like mainstream media has become very left-leaning. So do you not think that that has any type of bearings so far as the new published like data that's coming out? Like, do you think that there could be any type of like a left-leaning bias?
Then you just go through the studies and you can find out. Like in some of them, you can find bias if it's a real study.
Right.
So for instance, I think there are a couple that there were a couple trans studies that came out, for instance, that show that like the headlines were that these studies show that trans kids are being helped a lot. But there were a couple issues with the study. One is what do you call it when you get a drop off, guys? There's a name for this. It's not the callback rate. It's not the follow through rate. It's the, like if you start a study with 500 people, by the end you've got like 50 left. What am I thinking of? You might just say they were lost to follow up, right? So like for instance, there might be, attrition rate might be it as well. You've got a study where you've got 500 people in and you're tracking their healthcare. And by the time you get to the third checkup, only like 67 are left, right? And then you use those 67 to draw conclusions about what happened to all 500.
Right.
But the issue might be that the people that didn't follow up to the end, they might have dropped off in a non-representative way, meaning they dropped off for a particular reason that's not going to show up in that last group of 70 people. Like for instance, let's say I do a big study on, I'm going to find women in incredibly abusive relationships and I'm going to teach them ways to fight off their husbands, okay? Let's say that study starts with 100 people and by the end I've got 10 women left and all 10 of those women successfully fought off their husbands and it was like really good. Well, I could come through and publish like, I had a 100% success rate on this study.
They can actually say they had 100% even though 90% are no longer
dropped off, correct. But what if those 90% of women died?
Right.
Then it's like, okay, well, what the fuck is the value of this study, right? So when you've got studies with really bad follow-through, with really poor attrition, then you have to look at like, well, why do we think some people didn't follow through? Is it abnormally high? Because like a lot of research has like bad follow-through, callback rates and shit.
That's really interesting that it can be published in the same manner though, versus something that's like, oh no, it's actually 100% like true and true.
Well, what I gave that woman that was an extreme example. But I'm just saying like these are, but like that's something where you can look at the study, read it, and criticize it if you want. But that requires you to actually engage with the study, not just like read the headline and say, I don't believe this is true.
Right. Yeah. But then, so reading through the study, then you'll be able to go in and see, oh no, these people dropped off, and you'd probably be able to draw your own like logical conclusions.
You could, even better, believe it or not, researchers generally aren't retarded. Usually, if you go through a study, at the beginning or at the end, after they do their conclusion, the researchers themselves will speak about the limitations. Sometimes it's even in the abstract, I think, where they'll say like, this study sample was non-representative, we tried to adjust whatever we couldn't, there was a high drop-off rate, this might not be representative, right? Researchers will acknowledge the limitations of their studies, but you just have to actually be willing to read it. It's not that, most studies that are published are like, not that hard to read. Like you could probably spend like 15 minutes going through one and get a much, much, much better grasp than most people. Most people just don't want to do it at all.
Ask ChatGPT to summarize it.
Maybe. I've seen some questionable summaries by ChatGPT, but
I've seen actually some really, really bad ones. It's funny.
Yeah.
Oh man. No, fair enough. Interesting.
What else? A nice, good one.
What did you think about the whole? So Trump's getting arrested, right?
Trump's getting convicted. Trump is fucked.
But then, didn't something come out with Biden? I haven't even looked into it.
Go ahead, yeah.
No, I'm just asking.
Tell me. Ask me. What is the question about?
I'm just asking. I'm just, my propaganda
that's fine.
Twitter, my right-leaning Twitter feed has informed me that, Trump is being arrested. Meanwhile, there's all of this evidence of Biden taking bribes and doing all of this stuff is apparently like just as horrible as what Trump's done or something.
Well, but as soon as they have the evidence to prove that would be really compelling.
Yeah, but there's no evidence of it whatsoever.
Republicans have put together committee after committee. The most recent one that came out was the Durham report, trying to prove that there's all this malfeasance, all this horrible shit happening, all the bribery, all the corruption. But like for some reason, the Biden crime family is just so smart. They've managed to avoid everything so far. Yeah.
But with Trump stuff, how long did that take for all of that to come out, for there to finally be like the indictment?
The problem is that Trump is exceptionally retarded, and he is an exceptionally horrible person.
Okay.
So because these two things generally work in tandem with one another, it's been very easy to basically f him raw on the recent indictments that came out.
Okay. So he wasn't clever about concealing anything at all.
So the indictments for Trump.
It took a while for them to figure it out, though, right?
Well, so here's the issue.
When were the charges in question?
Here's the issue. The issue is basically what happened was he left the White House, and as leaving the White House, he had tons and tons of boxes of documents and stuff taken from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. Okay. Now, this isn't abnormal. Lots of people do it. Obama did it. Everybody's done this. Now, sometimes as part of this process, one, there could be classified material that you're just not aware is in there, or two, sometimes stuff can get like retroactively classified, right? Where
when you've already taken it.
Yeah.
And then,
so both of these things are possible. It happens. Even if he took classified documents, it's like, okay, it happens or whatever. The issue is that the National Archives people contacted him and they said, hey, we need to get this stuff back. And Trump didn't respond. Trump lied about what he had. And eventually the FBI contacted him. They're like, hey, we really need this shit back or we're going to come and take it. And then Trump told his attorneys to lie about what was there. He told employees in Mar-a-Lago to hide boxes, to move them around the apartment when he thought that people were coming with subpoenas and shit. And so after over a year of this, trying to get these documents back, the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago and they took back, I think at the end it was like 50 pieces of classified material strewn among like all these boxes of documents and shit.
Wow.
But the problem, the big problem, the really big problem, and this is where people get really mad about, they say like Hillary Clinton's emails and blah, blah, blah. Nobody knows this. Nobody, for whatever reason, because nobody actually cares about what the criminal code is. When it comes to taking classified material, you have to do it with intention. Right? So for instance, and I know you've heard this before, people are trying to say like, well, Biden took a classified document and so did Pence. And they did. But the difference was as soon as they found it, they were like, oh shit, there's some shit here. Like, come and get it. Right. And it didn't seem like they intentionally took the documents, right? Even Hillary with her emails, that there were some classified emails on her server. We don't know if she intentionally had those emails there, if she just didn't know.
Yeah.
Usually intent in these cases is really, really, really hard to prove. You have to be really retarded. Yes. But the problem here is Trump is literally on record saying things like, I took this from the White House. It's very secret. I shouldn't even be showing it to you. Right. And I didn't declassify it.
And there's evidence of him like literally saying that and saying like,
multiple times.
How do we hide this? Or
And yes, and there's,
sketchy.
Yeah. So the problem is he's laid out the entire case as unbelievably accessibly as possible.
Right. There's really no coming back from that, it sounds like.
Assuming everything is true, to be fair. Oh, this is my tweet. Like, this is one of his quotes. Secret. This is secret information. Look at this. But the problem is that, like, if everything in the indictments are true, and obviously hopefully the DOJ is really careful with this because they wouldn't want to charge this guy with something and be wrong about it. But if everything is true, he's absolutely beyond fucking retarded.
Right. And then he can't be president if he's like in jail, right?
I don't know I think he can. I don't think anybody knows necessarily how that. I think you can be president as long as you're not convicted of like fucking espionage or some shit.
Wait, you can like
murder and rape people.
You can be behind bars and be running the fucking country from behind bars.
I don't know how that would work, but I'm pretty sure it's possible.
That sounds like a really big logistical issue. Honestly.
Maybe, but I mean, like, technically, even Trump going to jail would be a logistical issue, right?
Right.
Because would be their Secret Service in jail with him, or how would that even work?
Yeah,
it would be really weird.
Yeah. He would have to be like the most protected person, like in that. Like he would not be around like people.
People are saying he can pardon himself. You can pardon yourself from federal charges, which these indictments are, but you can't pardon yourself from state charges. So like in New York, those are state charges. I don't know what's working its way through Georgia.
But so for Biden though, and what everyone's saying about Biden, there's absolutely zero evidence of that.
Of which thing?
So aren't people saying that like he took a bribe from like Ukraine or something like that?
Yeah, so there were emails, I think real emails, discovered on a laptop that I think was really Hunter Biden's, but nobody really knows. And like one of these emails one of these emails are being read in a way where Hunter Biden says like, I think he says like 10% for the big man or something, or he says I can let me get you in front of my dad or something. And basically people are reading into this to be like, oh, look, like Joe Biden is getting a cut of some of the overseas business dealings that Hunter Biden is involved in. Now, there have never been transaction records, financial statements, bank statements, any record of any of this actually happening, but people are reading that through the Hunter Biden email stuff, essentially.
You know what I always found really interesting is, like, if you think people were going to be talking about these, like, really, like, crazy things, like, there's huge implications. Like, would they be emailing about it, like, for real?
Well,
like,
I mean, Trump does, so, but no, yeah, you're right. The irritating thing is that, like, these would be like this would be one of the largest conspiracies in, like, all of U.S. history, like bigger than Iran-Contra, bigger than Watergate, bigger. It would be huge. If it's true,
like, if he actually did take,
that would be huge. And if it was influencing, like, policy and everything, it would be huge. Yeah. But there's just not good evidence for it.
And you don't believe that because you don't believe in conspiracies.
What?
You don't believe in conspiracies.
Of course I believe in conspiracies. Conspiracies happen. I mean, there have been conspiracies.
We spoke about that the first time. You believe in them. You just don't believe that they could happen really on a mass scale.
I don't believe in conspiracies that could happen that are, like, harmful to the American people, obviously, on a mass scale. No. Right, yeah. But, like, could some, like, for instance, like, the Bidens enriching themselves by doing overseas dealings and shit, that's like, I mean, if there's evidence for it, I would believe that. That's possible. Sure. Because you're being selfish, you're enriching yourself. Yeah.
Right. So, like, but conspiracies isn't, like, you know, very far right people would be like, oh, all of the vaccines are depopulation and blah blah blah. You know, like, you don't believe that on that type of a level, they, you know, different governments and
remember the strength of the claim goes into the requirement for the evidence, right? Like, if you're making a claim like that, there needs to be more than just, like, a Project Veritas 60-minute documentary on it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, and I agree. I feel like it's not good to put too much stock in. Like,
sure. If you want to believe in a conspiracy that makes you feel really good, if I had to believe in any right-wing conspiracies right now, it seems to be the case that Ukraine might have been involved in that Nord Stream bombing. I think right now they're the most likely culprit based on everything that's come out. So if you want to feel really good about attacking the left and believing in a right-wing conspiracy, I would say probably the attack of the Nord Stream pipeline by Ukraine is probably your best bet. If you want to feel superior to...
Wasn't that Russia's pipe?
It was a pipeline that it wasn't operational yet, but it was a pipeline that was supposed to be moving gas through to Europe. Yeah.
But it was on Russia's side, right? Is it like?
Oh my God, where was this in the?
Like, why would Russia do that to themselves anyways?
It's really complicated. It must go through. Is it the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea? Sorry, the Baltic Sea. Let me check. Actually, I'm sorry.
I have no clue.
It's south of Ukraine. Is the waters that it goes through, right?
I'm gonna refill my water bottle.
Nice. Okay, be careful.
You can have these back if you want.
Oh wait, northern. I'm sorry. No, you're good. Just send them right there. Oh, it is. It runs through.
It's through Russia.
Oh wait, I have no idea. I thought it was through the Black Sea. Sorry, I actually have no idea where the Nord Stream pipeline goes through. But no, it must not have been, because people like Germany and fucking and Sweden and Norway were all, like, investigating and everything. Finland, I think Norway was the one that had the less thing about. But no, it was a pipeline up here through the Baltics somewhere.
Okay.
Wherever it wasn't too deep either, because apparently that pipeline was only like 200 feet into the water, I think, right?
And so you think that that Ukraine.
Denmark. What were the arguments? So I've heard an argument that the United States could blow it up to make people hate Russia.
Wait, the USA blew it up?
No, these are just what the motivations are.
Okay.
I've heard people say the USA could blow it up to make people hate Russia. I've heard people say Russia blew it up because they're not sending gas through it anyway, to try to blame Ukraine. And I've heard people say Ukraine blew it up to make people hate, or so that people wouldn't trade gas with Russia during the war.
Damn. That's crazy.
Yeah,
so many theories come up.
Technically, depending on how you spin it or who you're looking at, there's technically there could be a compelling reason for any side involved to blow it up.
Right.
It was already, like, really unpopular across a lot of Europe, although I think Germany liked it. But I mean, who knows? It could have, fucking all three countries at the same time might have tried to destroy it. But I think right now, based on everything that's come out, if I'm to believe the Thug Shaker leaks, it seems pretty compelling that it was Ukrainian ordered, not from Zelensky, but from the head of his military services, and kept from Zelensky, is like the current theory. That's like the current conspiracy theory that if I were to believe in one, I would believe in that one more than anything, I think. But yeah, but that's a random. That's
yeah. So why do you think people are so like for helping Ukraine, and then on the opposite side like so against it? Like,
why are people for and against Ukraine?
Yeah, like how, like why has it become so much of like America's issue, and like why do people seem to either be so like on one side for that, and then on the other side like I'm kind of like impartial to it. I mean, also I really don't know too much about like foreign policy and how that affects us here, but yeah, like some people seem to be really, really mad about it, and then other people are like, no, it's like how.
Yeah, I mean, well, in a broad sense, like the USA runs the world, okay? The state of security is really important to everybody across the world, especially the United States, especially Europe, obviously being in Europe. So when countries start to get fucked with in Europe or in the Middle East or Northern Africa, people oftentimes look to the US to say like, hey, what are we going to do? Because the US kind of like takes point on all of that, whether it's through NATO or whether it's through the United Nations Security Council shit or whatever. But if that is, so that's like on the broad sense, on the geopolitical level, like that's what the adults think. Everybody else, it's just part of like the West versus East narrative, where the West is all like gay, trans, drone operators, and the East is like the heroic, like bear wrestling, beer drinking Russians. And people have kind of like, they have like projected all of their cultural, socio-political issues onto Russia and the United States, and Putin kind of speaks the language of a lot of these like red pill, matrix, conservative, whatever people, where Putin is like the West is being destroyed by too many gay people and all this shit, and yeah, so that's why like if you were to go and talk to like any red pill guy, they're probably going to say like, oh yeah, like I think Russia's probably on the right, the United States is corrupt, Putin is fighting for Christianity and what he believes in, and the West is morally bankrupt, etc.
Right, gotcha.
That's the argument that Russia's made anyway about the West for a long time anyway. But
someone just asked me, aren't I Hungarian, and don't I know the lineage of my people? What's that got to do with anything with that though? It's like a totally
Hungarian.
Hungary is like very different from. I mean, it's all Eastern Europe, right? But
I don't know what the shared history between Hungary,
somebody
Ukraine.
said that, they're like, shouldn't you know you're Hungarian? I'm like, how am I?